All right, we're gonna get started. Happy Thursday. Thanks for coming in. Please, as a reminder, fill out the attendance poll. Let me know if you need to resend once again. Just some housekeeping. Make sure your mic is muted, and direct any questions you have to the chat. We will answer them as we go. There will be no knowledge check, so just ignore the last bullet. Current project wait times. Application letter of intent is 3 to 4 weeks. DGPA reviews 1 to 2 weeks. Final rebate documentation review 3 weeks. Inspection is 1 to 2 weeks. And shutdown wait times is now about 2 months, but it's going to depend on your location or the location of the projects. Let me just resend this poll. All right. And then upcoming meetings, we're going to have our admin meeting next month on June 26th. It's not going to be the third Thursday of the month because it's a holiday. So it's going to be the last Thursday, June 26th next month. Our general will be July 17th, and then our next technical will be August 21st. Just as a reminder, newly registered contractors have to attend 1 technical and 1 admin, and we expect all participating contractors to attend our general. And then a quick safety moment. It's getting hot out, hotter than usual this time of the year. Make sure that you are hydrating. For shorter jobs, drink 1 cup of water every 20 minutes. For longer jobs, make sure you're incorporating electrolytes and don't rely on feeling thirsty. Make sure you are on a schedule. It could creep up on you before you know it. Breaks should last long enough to recover from the heat. Make sure you are taking breaks in the shade if possible. Air-conditioned vehicles, nearby buildings or tents, or an area with fans. Then I'm going to hand it over to Megan.
Thanks, Ruby. Good morning, everybody. So we've got a few announcements today. We're going to talk about, we're going to remind everybody on the call, and especially for folks that are new, of the adoption of the 2023 NEC code and NEC 2030.46 tap rule. We'll also look at the scheduling process in AB&C. That is now live and ready to go, but we'll point that out again and make sure that you guys all have access to those new features. And then looking at how to confirm transformer sizes ahead of design. We will look at that as well. And I just realized I can advance the slide, so give me 1 sec there. All right, there we go. Okay, so supply side tap requirements. As of 11/1/2023, City of Austin adopted the NEC 2023 code and are now enforcing 2030.46. So just read this out to you all so we were all on the same page here. Effective January 1st of 2023, pressure connectors and devices for splices and taps installed on service conductors shall be marked suitable for use on the line side of the service equipment or equivalent. So make sure it's got that marking as well, so you guys can pass that and are not noting that in your final inspections. All right, any project with a permit application submitted after August 1st of 2023 must comply. So that will apply to anything that you guys submit today. And if the connector does not contain the specified marking, inspectors will accept spec sheets showing it's rated for this use as an alternative. So just keep that in mind as you guys are installing these systems and getting them inspected. All right, so another announcement here, AB&C scheduling updates. You can now schedule inspections through the AB&C portal on auxiliary power permits. What else was included in that enhancement that was launched on November 1st of last year? Also auto billing, which leads to faster billing, payments, approvals, and reinspection fees getting auto billed. So you guys aren't having to wait around for us to, push those buttons and get those fees billed and onto you. DGPA and AE reviews are also conducted to and from the aux permit. So you don't have to reach out to DGPA review ahead of time unless you want to and want to get that confirmed. However, we'll look in here in just a second. Another way to look at transformer sizing ahead of having a permit. However, ideally, you can just add all of that to the permit. And then once we conduct the AE review, we'll give you feedback on whether or not that project can move forward. Document uploads are also available throughout the permit lifecycle. So if you guys have DGPAs, wire diagrams, photos of existing service, or want to connect or want to add interconnection agreements, you can add that even after the permit is activated. So if you've got changes to your as-built design that were different from what you pitched initially, please do upload those new plan sets before that final inspection so that we can get that up there and in front of the inspectors so they're looking at the right plan set. And then, of course, as I mentioned, there is a new final solar inspection scheduling process. There is something to note that if you request the 305 final instead of the final solar, you will not get email notifications. That's something we're going to work to correct for you all so that if you request the 305 or the final solar inspection, you get those notices. However, today, the only one that is set up for those notices is the final solar inspection, the ref inspection, or the pre-con inspections. So anything outside of that, we will need to email you and make sure to just confirm those appointment times. And then if you've got questions on any of this or how this process looks, you can always consult our AE Solar Permitting Manual. It is now online. Please feel free to check out that link whenever you guys get these slides afterwards. All right, so confirming transformer sizes ahead of design. So if you guys wanted to, you may or may not be aware of this already, but you can reach out to our AEGIS services team so that you can determine, for one, which transformer is serving your site, and two, the size of that transformer. So obviously you can always, go and look at the transformer box and see if there's a listing on there and see there should be always a KVA size on there. However, the best way to do this prior to the permit application is to send an email to aegiservices@austinenergy.com. And they can provide you a printout of what that looks like. All right. I think we probably have a pause for questions, but I did just see one pop up. Still shows up on the weekly inspection sheet. Yes, I believe that's correct. Although if you're referring to something that you get from Smartsheet, that may look a little differently now because it's going to come from A, B, and C instead. So you guys will have access to any of your historical permits and your existing and active permits. But that'll be through the A, B, and C account. Please post, sign, and link. All right, we'll copy that over again, but I will pass it back over to Ruby. Thank you.
Thanks, Megan. I think Athena.
Hey, everybody. All right. So overview of interconnection process. All right. So first thing, we'll have an overview of our references. So some of your reference material. The first one here is going to be your master electrician. Make sure that you know the NEC 2023. Article 90 is about PV systems, and then 705, interconnected electrical power sources. Then we have our Austin Energy Design Criteria Manual. This is providing guidelines and descriptions, definitions that are approved by Austin Energy's City Council. And you can find that on our website. And then I don't know if we talked about it before, but we will send you all these slides, so you'll be able to have access to all of these links. Next resource we have is our distribution interconnection guide. So when we say DIG, that's what we're referring to. This has basically all of the information you need to safely interconnect to the grid. And again, this is found on our website. Next, we have our contractor quick reference guide, and it is a checklist that you should look into before you get a inspection. This is found in page 77 through 79 of the distribution interconnection guide. Next, we have the City of Austin Electrical Ordinance, and this is where all the color codes, license requirements, and local code requirements are. This will be on Muni Code, and again, the link is there. For incentive program guidelines, these are the guidelines for our specific programs, and this will be in the EECP portal homepage under publications. This is also on our website. And then our last overview reference material is the International Residential Code 2021. And this just sets the building code for 1 and 2 family dwellings. And the code link is also here. All right. A day in the life of a solar project. So for design, again, our references that we just spoke about earlier, please make sure that you know and are familiar with those things. If a project is going to be rebated, make sure to check out the guidelines and submit the rebate at the initial stage. Then you'll go to permitting with DSD, submit to Austin Build and Connect or through plan review. Submit the plans with the permit, and then the permit balance has to be paid off to have a valid permit. Afterwards, you'll do some pre-work for shutdowns. You'll have to call the number there. And then for meter variances, please see that email address. Shutdowns about 2 weeks to 2 months, depending on where you're located in the city. And then up to 2 weeks for meter variances. Please make sure that you're applying as early as possible, and then do not build until approved. Let's set our customer expectations appropriately, make sure that we're all in the loop and on the same page timelines wise. Afterwards, there's installation. So check out the quick reference guide and the interconnection guide. And then also we have information within this document that you will be emailed. And so you can reference this. And then if your name is on the permit, the work belongs to you. So you're accountable for workmanship and keeping the permit active. And then once you get to inspection, check out the inspection checklist. Our inspection's about 2 to 3 weeks. Meter install is 5 to 10 business days after the past final inspection. A licensed contractor's licensed electrician must be present at the final inspection. Your customer's attendance is optional. All right, so what is different about Austin? The design criteria and local ordinance. So the key differences from NEC 2023, IRC 2021. A solar permit or a solar PV meter must be required for all solar installs. No loads on solar side of PV meter. Color codes, please make sure to see the design criteria manual, pages 7 and 8. Full size neutral through inverter aggregate panel, not 70% as in the NEC. Please use a minimum number 6 copper for EGC for interconnection point to be PV disconnect. Supply side connections, panel must have a main breaker. PV system fusible disconnect rate 60 amp minimum. And then please see our appendix B of the interconnection guide. A 2-inch clearance around the meter can, and then address numbers have to be 2 inches high, black on white. They can be on the solar meter, the solar meter can, main panel, or the AE meter. And then surge protectors are required for all solar installations. Through the rebate program, we do have shade requirements. So you must have 75% or greater for the total TSRF. And if we do ask for a shade analysis, y'all have 10 business days to submit that. And then a minimum of 5-degree tilt for all solar installations. Okay, so what does a good line diagram look like? So please make sure that when you submit these things, you've got a couple of things very detailed out. Solar array details, we want to see what's going on there. Breaker locations and the sizes. Also wire sizes. The line diagram must match your installation. So if there's any updates, please make sure you update and submit a new wire diagram. Okay. So in the design phase, make sure that you're doing an site assessment and look closely at the existing service before installation to capture any upgrades, repair costs if there are necessary. All meters and disconnects are grouped, labeled as per NEC 690 and 705, and then 2-inch clearance around the PV meter. All right, so necessary service repairs. So I said this in the last slide, but you will have to make sure to address any issues before installing. This will require an upgrade permit before the solar can start. So if the conduit is separated, if there's not enough clearance, You need 30-inch wide clearance. The meter needs to, if it's in an enclosed area, you'll need to address the revenue meter. And then service riser, no main disconnect is an older service. So again, just have to have that upgrade permit before the solar can start. All right, so for supply side connections, please make sure that you're seeing the interconnection guide, Appendix B. Some of the common errors we see is that the solar disconnect is larger than 10 feet from the supply side connectors for residential installations. There's not enough room in the panel, and it doesn't have a minimum of 60 amp disconnects. SST must be installed in the panel with a main breaker. Just please make sure that you're looking at the interconnection guide. It has all of the information y'all are going to need. All right. Okay. So supply side connectors. So we've got correct placement and incorrect placement. For correct placement, contractor needs straight and centered. Piercing taps need to be installed on a straight run of service conductor. Do not install them where there is a bend in the wire or where there isn't room in the panel. A good rule of thumb is that if you have to apply pressure to reinstall the dead front on the panel, then there is not sufficient room in the panel. And as always, just follow the manufacturer's instructions. Okay, array design solar panel placement. So when possible, please make sure that you are in the roof plane. Any arrays that exceed that ridge line or go over the roof hip will need a PE stamp. So you'll have to have the engineer's drawings on those stamps. The top where you're in plane, and then on the bottom where you're over, you're just going to have to need those stamps. It's just an extra step, and just make sure if that's the case that you're going through and getting those stamps. All right, so for shade analysis, I said this before, but we're going to talk about it again. For the rebate program, it must be a TSRF of above 75%. So if it's below, then you are not able to get the rebate. If we request an on-site shade shade analysis for your project, you should please provide a map where the measurements are taken. Sitemap should include all nearby shade elements. Provide a picture with shade measurements for each location, and provide a total average TSRF for the array. Please be on site and in person when you're doing these, and then list the tilt and azimuths that match the project measures in EECP. To avoid a warning, the average TSRF for total systems should be 75% or greater, and we do reserve the right to request a TSRF for specific points. Please provide a legitimate shade analysis within 10 business days of our request. And again, this is for the rebated programs or the rebated systems. All right. So a successful project will require collaboration between the design and the electrical team. So some of the common errors are service upgrade requirements not being met, repair work not caught at the initial site assessment, connectors not torqued to the proper specifications, and for the rebated programs, the shade requirements are not met. Failure to comply with local codes and ordinance is also a common area. So please make sure that you're looking at our references to avoid these. All right, some common design mistakes are working clearance door. It must open to 90 degrees, so make sure that you just do that double check, open it all the way. Also, drilling holes into the meter can damages the meter. Per our DCM, the language is pretty clear that we are not able to accept these. And the page 95 shows that information there. All right, some metering design reminders. Breaker sizing, main must be equal to or less than the meter socket rating. Wire weight ahead of billing meter is not allowed per our design criteria manual. Taps, splices, and communication wires not allowed in the meter sockets. And then when you are working to alter the service, check with distribution metering for feedback when you build. So their email is there. And this is just to ensure that the PV meter installation won't be turned down later on. Or when you encounter an unusual service, best to just check and see, and they'll help you out there. All right, and with that, back to you, Megan.
Thanks, Athena. I appreciate it. All right. Oh, and the slides went away. Oh no. All right, let me see if I can find these.
No worries, I can pull them back up.
Thanks, Ruby. Appreciate it.
Yep.
Thank you. Thank you. So while we wait, I'll just go ahead and address one of the questions that we saw in the chat. So this one was from Isela. We finally received an outage date for inspection. We just need to schedule a 304 temp electric inspection. If the project doesn't have an outage, do we not need to schedule the 304 temp inspection? So just a reminder, and I think we'll go through this in one of the subsequent slides as well. The 304 temp is what we use to ensure that your CT meter inspection and installation is going to be safe for both our crew and you guys as well. So if you have a commercial project and or if you've got a disconnect that I think the numbers are over 350 amps for single phase, 225 for three phase, maybe I may be mixing those up. Then you do need to schedule that 304 temp power ahead of time and then schedule those CT inspections. But all right, let's keep moving on. All right, so looking at the permit types. So just keep in mind, everybody, for this group, auxiliary power electrical permits are required for all distributed generation projects. However, additional permits might be required based on the scope of work. So of course, the the Aux Power EP is required for any solar, battery, or other distributed energy resources. This is both for inside and outside of the extraterritorial jurisdiction. You apply online via the AB&C portal. And if you have questions on that, you can always start a chat or schedule an appointment with DSD or the BTCS team to ask questions about that permit application specifically. Additional electrical permit types are upgrade, repair, or remodel. These are required in different instances, but basically if you're working on the billing meter or utility side of the meter, you'll need an upgrade permit, or if you're upgrading the system or the service, I should say, you will need that upgrade permit. It does require an approved USPA, so just make sure you're getting that and attaching it to the permit as well. Repair permits are usually done on for work that's done on the customer side of the billing meter. This does not require an approved USPA, so if you are going through that permit application and have questions, just keep that in mind. And then again, of course, start a chat or schedule an appointment with DSD if you've got questions during that initial submission. For remodels, these are really only for commercial projects, and basically this will allow you to work on the utility side of the commercial meter. It also requires an approved USPA, and this remodel permit will be paired with a plan review permit, so just keep in mind that those should align. And then building permits are required for ground mounts, solar shingles, and then commercial projects inside Austin city limits full purpose. So feel free to check that out, those links there, and then you can apply for either residential plan review or commercial plan review on a slightly separate link there than the AB&C link. You'll go to a web form instead. All right, I'm going to keep moving on. I do see some questions, but it looks like they're getting answered, so thank you for that. Much appreciated, Stu. Permitting and inspection reminders. If taking over a project that already has a permit, just be sure to submit the modify an existing permit web form. There's technically two options to this, although I was looking at this the other day and they kind of seem very, very similar. So just keep in mind that if you're going to either transfer or repurchase a permit, just know you do need to sign the transfer of contractor letter first and get that submitted to DSD so that they can consider it. You can either have the homeowner sign and approve that transfer or the previous contractor. So depending upon who you're in contact with, have them sign that letter and then you can take over the permit after that. You will need a new DGPA and actually also a wire diagram for either of these options to take over a permit. Alrighty, moving on to requesting shutdowns from AE. So it is the same email address that you guys are probably very familiar with. That's going to be St. Elmo Distribution at austinenergy.com. There is also a phone number there. However, email is recommended for contacting in regards to requesting shutdowns. Please note that the response may take a few days. They do have quite a few of those requests that come through. However, if you don't see anything, you can always reach out to us and ask and see if it was in fact received. Please include upgrade permit number and scope of work within your request. We'll also include more details on the next slide for those submissions so that you guys are successful. But keep in mind also that your electrician must be on site for those shutdowns. Either your master electrician, wireman, or journeyman are accepted. And then AE build account must be attached to the address on the permit. We've had instances where somebody tries to do a shutdown on an address where it's not on the same permit, and that gets weird, and we will cancel your shutdown, your scheduled shutdown if that happens. Alrighty. So all solar and ESS projects, again, require that aux power electrical permit from the city of Austin. Again, even if in the ETJ, you will still need the aux power permit. Permits from other jurisdictions will not suffice. So every once in a while, we get a question about a Travis County permit or a Blue Bonnet permit or something like that. Unfortunately, those will not cover you for an Austin energy inspection. So we do still need that aux power permit. But of course, if you've got questions, please feel free to reach out to us at solarinspections@austinenergy.com, and we can help you sort through that. We do not perform inspections or set PV meters without this permit. So if you don't have this permit, you will not be able to get a PV meter or cut any meter seals. When you're applying for the aux permit, please do use the following language for the permit description field. It's really helpful for us to be able to kind of decipher quickly what the actual scope of that permit is when you include details like the system size, the energy storage size, and if you're on a supply side or line side connection, that is also very, very helpful. So please do include those in the description. All right. Don't install until you have a permit. That is very, very serious. It is an offense against our City of Austin ordinances. And you can be caught and you will be charged for a violation doing work without a permit. So please just avoid that. Don't start any work until you have an approved active permit. And again, of course, feel free to reach out to us if you have questions about that. Solar energy storage systems do not receive formal electrical plan review for residential or commercial projects yet. Just keep that in mind. Hopefully that will change in the future. But for now, just know that we do not do electrical plan review on either residential or commercial, but that will happen at your site visit. So whenever you guys schedule that inspection, that is when we will review your plans and make sure that everything is built per spec and per the NEC and IRC codes. All right, so any work on electrical service, again, requires that upgrade, repair, remodel permit, and it needs to be closed prior to requesting that final solar inspection. So before you get the final solar scheduled, we need to make sure that any other service work is complete so that we can close it out basically and know that that's the last step that you guys are taking on that service. Please do pay any reinspection fees before requesting reinspection. One thing we noticed is that we cannot actually schedule on A, B, and C while these inspection fees are unpaid. So even though you're not having to wait to get that billed anymore, it's automatically getting billed, which is a plus. You still need to go ahead and pay it before we can get that scheduled for final inspection. Alrighty, and then for related projects, non-participating subcontractors may not pull the aux power permit while another contractor applies for the rebate. The system must be contracted and permitted by the same participating contractor. So please keep that in mind whenever you guys are applying for rebates and permits. If you do have a subcontractor that was not the person that pulled the permit, you should still be able to add them the same way that you would modify the permit, an existing permit, and add electrical contractors to it. So just keep it in mind, if it didn't start with a sub, you can still add them later, but make sure that your rebate paperwork and your auxiliary power permit are aligned on that. All right, we'll keep moving on. So the DGPA, the Distributed Generation Planning Application, this is something that you'll submit with every single aux power permit. If it's under 25 kW AC, it does not require additional AE review. You'll still attach it to the permit. However, we will not review it prior to your inspection. So you will be able to continue on with the project and begin the work without that DGPA approval up front. So then anything from 25 kilowatts to 500 kilowatts AC does require review by the Austin Energy Solar team. So you can either submit that again to that DGPA review inbox or apply for the permit itself and then request it on the permit per that AE review. And then once we conduct that AE review, you'll get that detail back on the permit itself again, or you'll get it via email from DGPA review@austinenergy.com. Alrighty, for anything over 500 kilowatts, or that has a grid-tied spinning interconnected generator, you're going to want to reach out to the AEDR feasibility team for hosting capacity analysis. Please submit the DGPA with the permit application. That's another avenue, of course, again, similar to our AE review. You can submit that with the application, and the DR feasibility team will receive it there. Additionally, on the downtown network, if you guys are building systems on the downtown network, it does require approval by that AEDR integration team. So same thing, either submit it with a permit or reach out to AEDR feasibility at austinenergy.com. Alrighty. Scheduling a shutdown. So here we are with Austin Energy scheduled outages and City of Austin inspections. You will need both to schedule these shutdowns. So just keep in mind there's a step 1 and step 2 for either controlled outages during normal business hours or after business hours. There's a slightly separate process there. Keep in mind you'll need an upgrade, repair, or remodel permit that is active first to schedule that shutdown, and then include any key details in that permit, such as upgrade or rebuild, within the description of work. But in order to schedule those, step 1 will be to call St. Elmo Distribution or send them an email with the electrical permit number, service address, and contact info. And then step 2 is that once you have that outage appointment scheduled, you need to schedule a 304 or 305 on the repair permit or the upgrade permit through A, B, and C no later than 12 p.m. business day before. So Estella, coming back to your question, you do still need a 304 or 305, but this one is for a separate team. This will be for the City of Austin inspectors on that electrical permit outside of our inspections and outside of the CT inspections. All right, for controlled outages after business hours, again, you're going to email St. Elmo or Kramer if you're in the North Territory. For inquiries about your work order, email work order group numbers, either St. Elmo or Kramer, again, depending on what section of Austin you're in. And then once you have that after hours scheduled, after hours outage scheduled, please email DSD Inspection Supervisor Hyatt Dunn to coordinate the follow-up inspection with City of Austin. Make sure to provide the date, time, permit number, address, and site contact in that email to Hyatt. Alrighty, and then just one note on this page as well. If you're not sure which service territory you're working in, please do feel free to consult that link that shows our service area map for Austin Energy, and then it'll show you which AE metering office you need to contact regarding your project. Alrighty, one more reminder here on outages. So for canceling outage appointments, please provide the reason for cancellation. Typically, appointments are canceled because the corresponding City of Austin inspection has not been scheduled. So again, that step 2 is not always taken, in which case we cannot do step 1 because we don't want to leave customers without power. And again, right there, it says that if this is not scheduled, customer will be without power, hence why the corresponding outage appointment would then be canceled. So again, call and email to cancel the appointment. If canceled within 3 business days, AE will charge a fee and then reschedule your appointment for the next available date. If you're able to cancel before 3 business days, you can waive that fee. So please try to be on top of that if possible. For permitting, again, the description of work should be very thorough, include details like upgrade or rebuild or de-energizing at the transformer, if that's the scope of work that's included in your project. An upgrade, repair, remodel permit is required to schedule these shutdowns, and that is the permit number you need to provide for that shutdown. Out of scope for outage appointments, if you're adding a transfer switch, you can do this under an AEAS permit, or if you're replacing like-for-like meter components, including but not limited to meter socket blocks, internal meter component replacement. These replacements, this type of work does not require a permit or a scheduled outage. Again, please do reach out to us if you've got questions on that. Otherwise, we'll take it as we see them come. Alrighty, and with that, I'm going to pass this over to Stuart. So Stu, take it away.
Again, good morning, y'all. Stuart here. When do you need a meter variance? Meter variance being when you can't group the 2 meters, the revenue meter and the PV meter. On the left, you can see that the meters are close to each other, but there's an obstacle in the way and they're not within line of sight of each other. So if you need to do something like that, then you will need a variance. You'll need to apply for that and receive it before you install that equipment. On the right there, you got 20 feet between the 2, which is how we define grouped. and they're just avoiding the gas regulator there. You can see that. So that's considered grouped because you can see the two. You can walk right up to it, and they are grouped in that situation. Moving along. Okay, so CT meters. When do you need one? CT meters are for larger services. So if you've got a project that has a disconnect that's 400 amps to 600 amps, then or 400 amps or larger, you'll need an instrument rated meter. Between 400 and 600 is a trans socket, right? So that's the big one that's got the CTs integrated into the enclosure itself. Above 600, so 601 and up, you'll have a meter enclosure and then a CT enclosure that are separate from each other. So what are CTs? They're basically, they have windings inside to transform the current from large to small so that our meters can handle it without being damaged. In this case, there'll be a multiplier on the customer's bill, and this typically only applies to commercial installations. Austin Energy does not provide the CTs, so you'll need to go to our website and look at the approved meter socket list, and there'll be a list there of the specs for approved meters. Also, I included that link there too, so that's the letter from our engineering team from like 2017, I think, that calls out what we approve in CTs. So the inspection process, it's a little different. If you have a CT meter, you'll contact Distribution Metering Group to schedule a CT inspection and the meter installation after the PV meter is installed and after passing a 304 temporary inspection, but before requesting a final solar inspection. So it's a little tricky. We're trying to basically mimic how main service revenue meters get installed. So what we'll do is we'll inspect the main PV switchgear before it's energized. So it's a safety thing, right? A lot of this stuff is safety stuff. So if we pass, if we can look at that switchgear de-energized and ensure that it's wired properly, then we'll pass the 304, which will initiate. Actually, that in itself is not the step that initiates the metering team to go out there. So we'll pass the 304 with you guys, and then the contractor is responsible for sending an email there to AE DMO dispatch at Austin Energy to request that the CT inspection happens. So that's 304 CT inspection, then the 305. So how to request an inspection. All instrument rated PV meters are required to have a CT inspection like I just addressed. I think I just said this essentially, but for safety purposes, the DG service, it's got to have a 304 temp first, so everything's not energized, and this is without exception. So once the 304 is approved, contractor will notify DMO to install a meter and allow the DG service to be energized. CT meters must not be energized prior to metering inspection. Please refer to 1.9.1.9 in the design criteria manual for height requirements. Height requirements being 30 inches minimum to the bottom of the enclosure, and I think up to like 96 high. So you have a berth there, but it's going to be that's going to be off the ground at least 30 inches. So once the 304 is passed, you can request a CT inspection using that email address there. The AE, the metering team, their technicians, they got 5 business days generally to wire the CTs and install the CT meter. And after that, the contractors are eligible to request the final solar inspection, and upon passing, will receive PTO. So a little more about meters. They've got to be accessible 24 hours a day to our metering team. They need to be grouped within 20 feet. They need to have 3 feet of clearance in front of them. They need to have 2 inches of clearance around the meter can itself. So on all sides, you need 2 inches of clearance. Pro tip, an offset nipple is not quite 2 inches. So you'll need some additional hardware to get to that 2-inch clearance. And the center of the can has got to be 30 inches to 72 inches from final grade too. So we've had some instances in the past where revenue meters have been installed and then a customer finishes some landscaping and all of a sudden that number changes. So it's a good thing to check at site assessment to make sure that the revenue meter is actually within that range. If you see a cut seal, you should stop work and tell us about it at that email address there. AE Revenue Protection at austinenergy.com. And if you don't report the cut seal, you may be held responsible for it. So keep an eye out for that. When you do your assessment, find from time to time that revenue meter seals have been cut and there's some unpermitted work that's happened. So that needs to be addressed and handled, and responsibility assigned to the proper party before you move on. And you can request a rough to get a seal cut for service work if you're doing service work on the PV meter. So some common errors are as the meter can is incorrectly wired. What that means is you've got your solar landing on the load side of your PV meter. So solar is going to land on the line side always. Basically line to line. It's a quick way to think about it. Line of your disconnect to line of your solar meter. Load side of your solar meter to your interconnection point. Improper meter cans. So we've got a list of approved cans that you can find on the website. Quick tip is also that it's going to be a 200 amp meter can with the bypass handle. If it's not, this is for residential self-contained meters, but if it's not the right one. Also, the meter is behind a locked gate at the time of inspection. We do need access to all that equipment. If you've left a temporary meter instead of a permanent meter inside of a meter to operate, that is not acceptable. So just be sure that your system is not energized when we show up for inspection. Knocking out your own holes in the meter can. So you've got to use the factory KOs. That's critical. So don't make your own holes in meter cans. Also, don't use plastic or wood anchors to adhere your meter enclosures to the wall. And as far as meter location goes, you need, like I said, you need 2 inches around all cans. You need at least 6.5 feet of overhead clearance at the location of the meters. 30 inches minimum, 72 inches maximum to the center of the can, and a 3-foot radial clearance around gas meters, gas regulators. So please break and isolate the grounded conductor, the neutral, in both the meter can and the disconnect. You can see here, hopefully, that they've done that. They've done that with by approved means, which is a Polaris block or similar is fine. Also is a isolated neutral bar in the meter can. Both of those are acceptable ways to break and isolate the neutral. So if your existing service is questionable, please request a field consult under the Austin Energy Additional Services Permit type. So it's not quite a permit, but it is just like you're applying for a permit. So you'll see Austin Energy Additional Services, and then there are a few different types of that. I think one is meter review, one is a field consult. Those are probably the 2 most likely ones that you'll use, and that can be applied for and granted prior to being under contract and having a permit for the construction of the project itself. So I think it's beneficial if you give as much information as detailed with photographs and plan sets if you have them, or preliminary plan sets. The more you put in there and the more accurate information you can give us, the more we can help you at the outset of your project. And just an example here of something that's definitely going to have to get replaced is a cloth insulated service entrance cable. So if you see that, that's a non-starter. That's going to be a service upgrade before solar starts. Some common mistakes that we see on the roof is roof penetrations are not properly flashed. So you've got to have a listed flashing piece of equipment on the roof. Poor wire management. So you need to have your wires off the roof. They need to be managed so that you don't have connectors resting on the roof. 1 for heat, 2 for potential water getting into connectors. The use of material that's not outdoor or UV rated. Obviously, you need to have everything installed and designed and listed for the environment that it's in. If you have unfastened modules, junction boxes, or conduit on the roof, we don't always get on the roof. Occasionally we do, and we find these things. So I know in the summer it gets hot and you're moving quickly because it's uncomfortable, but fastening down all your modules and your junction boxes and your conduit is very important. Not all your fittings are made wrench tight. Also something that takes a little more time, but is essential for the lifelong production of your system. And all metal is not bonded back to the service. So any metal component that is likely to become energized, as we know, NEC says has to be bonded back to the service. for the functioning of all overcurrent and trip devices. So and we might require photos of your work at the final inspection, so be sure to have those. And that's under the array, that's inside junction boxes. That's any part of the project on the roof that we couldn't see from the ground. So here's some common labels that we require. They're generally ones that the NEC requires. So there is one that is kind of unique to us, which is that top right one. This enclosure contains feed-through conductors that may be energized when the disconnect is de-energized. So that's essentially like if you're doing a partial home backup and you have to get access to conductors that you want to back up, but you can't move them out of that existing main panel. What that means is somebody's going to shut off that main disconnect and you're still going to have conductors in there that are energized from, after wherever your transfer switch is. So that's how we handle that label to warn people that, hey, you turn the main disconnect off, you still might have some lab wires in here. The other ones are pretty straightforward. I think you'll understand those. We also have a label on the bottom right there about energy storage system on site. It's telling someone that in order to do a full home shut off, you'll need to kill the main breaker and an additional ESS disconnect. So energy storage system location and placard. If it's within site and within 50 feet of the main disconnect, you don't need a placard according to NEC 70510. If it's not within site, you do need a permanent placard that is oriented properly at the main service location, showing the location of those batteries. So the placard being oriented properly is kind of important. You should be able to look at that service and immediately point to where the ESS are. Shouldn't have to crane your neck and think too hard. Installation of ESS or batteries in garages. So we use the 2021 International Residential Code. The garage must be finished and separated from the dwelling unit, i.e. the habitable area. So per IEC 2021, ESS within attached garages must be listed and marked as suitable for use in dwelling units. They've also got to be protected using approved barriers if the vehicle is in the drive path. So you don't need one every time in a garage, but often you do. So that's something that you might want to request a pre-construction meeting for. A little more guidance on energy storage. All energy storage has to be UL 9540 listed. It can't be installed anywhere within the dwelling unit itself. If you're installing in AFD territory, you need to send plans to AFD Hazmat at austintexas.gov for review of individual ESS units. They're not allowed to be, each individual unit should not be larger than 20 kilowatt hours. Or when the aggregate system is larger than 80 kilowatt hours, that's considered a commercial project and it will need to go through AFD plan review. If you're not sure which jurisdiction you're in, that's a map that you can link to right there. ESS projects must have plans reviewed and endorsed by a Texas licensed professional engineer. And this needs to be attached to the auxiliary power permit and presented at final inspection. We can receive that in digital form too at final inspection, but ultimately it just needs to be on the permit. So the plan set will be uploaded to the aux power permit and will be reviewed at the time of inspection for the endorsement. And it'll be a fail if you don't have that endorsement at the time of inspection. And as always, review manufacturer's instructions before installing. And I think that's me passing it off. To Megan, maybe?
Yes, thanks, Sue. Apologies. All right, everybody.
ma'am.
All right, let's look at the solar inspections in ABC. Okay, so again, keep in mind that you can request pre-wire final inspections when there is no additional solar capacity. So what you'll do for that is fill out an auxiliary electrical permit and select pre-wire as the DG type. You will not have to add any capacity into any of those fields because again, if you're just doing a pre-wire, you will not have capacity. The other alternative to those are refs, pre-cons, and final inspections can also now be requested on the auxiliary electrical power permit. We do have a couple of other options there. However, they are not generally required. So if you have questions about other inspection types, please do reach out to us before requesting those. I've seen recently a couple times where contractors have requested all of the inspections. just know that I know that required indicator does look a little bit weird. It almost looks like every single inspection type is required. That is not the case. It's just implying that the comment box is required if you choose that inspection type. So again, the only ones that are required for residential or final solar inspections, but you can also do roughs and pre-cons prior to that final at any time. And then also for commercial inspections, pre-construction meetings are required, but then after that, again, you just need the final solar inspection and potentially a couple of rough inspections in between. And again, if you've got questions, feel free to reach out to us. So emails will be sent to you and your customers upon permit approval as soon as the inspection's requested, scheduled, postponed, passed, failed, along with inspector notes. And once you have the PV meter installation approval and the PV meter is installed, you'll also receive an email from AB&C at that point. ECP enrollment inspection step update requests for any rebated projects will also be sent out via email, so just keep an eye out for those. And of course, if you do see these emails come through, please make sure to make AB&C a safe sender so that they're not going to spam folders. All right, one note here that is really important. I do want you guys all to be aware. We are starting to roll off Smartsheet. So we'll continue to use that form stack link that you guys are probably familiar with in the interim. However, we are now able to schedule inspections in AB&C. And so we are going to hope to move over to that platform and start moving away from Smartsheet. So that time has come. All righty. Going on to the next slide here. So before you install, what types of inspections can you request and when? You can do a rough inspection. This is required if you're going to bury any conduit or if it's not going to be visible by the time of that final inspection. Systems over 25 kilowatts may also need additional roughs, so keep that in mind throughout the duration of the project. You can email us if you need assistance or have questions about a rough or whether one is required. This does need to occur prior to the final electrical inspection, so if you are in a situation where you're requesting a rough and a final at the same time, just know that there's probably something a little strange going on there. And I suppose we could do it to record that if you're going to bury conduit, we could do that at the same time, but typically you want to do the rough prior so you can continue the project before scheduling that final inspection. All right, pre-construction meetings. These are on-site consultations with Austin Energy inspectors that allow us to review design and interconnection requirements with you in person. You'll need to request these if you have complex site setups or just want feedback on your plans. These are also required for commercial projects or if interconnecting on the utility side of the billing meter. They're also highly recommended for new contractors or anyone struggling to pass the inspections so that you can, get a little bit more detail about that project ahead of time before requesting that final inspection. Please do have an active auxiliary power permit and finished drawings before requesting that pre-con meeting. However, obviously we wanted you to do that before putting up equipment on the wall or installing panels. All right, again, we made this distinction a few times, but for anybody new or for anybody not familiar, a pre-wire only inspection is for a future solar project. It's essentially what we use to allow the contractors or customers to make a building solar ready. However, if you're not actually installing solar at the time, you're just burying wiring or conduit so that you can get that building prepared for future solar, then that'll be done under a pre-wire only inspection. So Austin Energy inspects all pre-wire installations in its territory, whether residential, commercial, inside or outside city limits. Again, in the ETJ, that still applies. You'll fill out the DGPA and permit saying pre-wire for solar in section C. Don't add any capacity info. And then you'll obtain that aux power electrical permit with pre-wire for solar in the permit description. Again, that just helps us cue into exactly what scope of work you guys are doing. In the solar inspection request form, or again, when requesting inspections, you can select pre-wire for solar, or you can just request a final solar inspection. Either of those work if the aux permit type is pre-wire. An inspection pass result will serve as reference for any future solar projects at that site. So we will carry on permit details into the very far future. I think I've seen permits as far as like 1950 in the system. So keep in mind that if you guys have buried conduit, or if you've passed a solar inspection or a pre-wire inspection, we will maintain that record. And so hopefully you can reference that in the future. All right, how to be a rock star at inspections. Make sure to send the correct person. We haven't updated this slide, but it should be your master electrician, journeyman, or residential wireman. That is listed on the permit. So again, the contractor that we meet on site for the inspection should be the electrical contractor that's listed on the permit. If those two are different, we cannot actually give you details, specific details beyond public details about that inspection or about that project. So please do make sure that you're listing any subs on the permit as well, so that if we're going to meet one on site, everybody's ready and has what they need to do so. All right, come prepared, bring your wiring diagram or one line, or just make sure that the latest is updated and added to the permit. Make sure you've got your layout, TDLR documentation. That should include your license on hand, as well as the TCL number on the vehicle that you arrive in. And then, of course, bring any tools to make corrections as well. Alrighty, so preparing for the inspection. Prior to installation, refer to the distribution interconnection guide, section C, or talk to a solar inspector. Again, you can do that via pre-construction meeting, or just reaching out to us at solarinspections@austinenergy.com. Our inspectors can be reached there as well. Prior to final, we want to make sure that you guys are ready for that. It is a violation of city ordinances if you're calling for finals and you're not ready. So please do just make sure that everything's buttoned up so that we can conduct a final inspection and not have to get it rescheduled or canceled or failed for any reason. Do test the system, but do not leave the test meter in. Of course, that'll be really obvious when the inspectors get to site, so just keep that in mind. Do perform quality checks and just make sure everything, again, is kind of buttoned up. All your I's are dotted and T's are crossed before we come out there. And then feel free to use the contractor quick reference guide in the dig to make sure that your installation meets all the requirements. Again, you'll find that in the interconnection guide in Appendix C. For related projects, make sure you receive the solar rebate confirmation letter prior to installing. Do not install without a confirmation letter that your rebate is approved. And then, of course, make sure to close the installation step in ECP before sending us before requesting that inspection. So everything's ready to go. I'm just going to note a few of these common errors. So non-performing systems, poor cable management. This one gets called out pretty often. If it's not neat and workmanlike, we'll call you out for poor cable management and make sure that that gets fixed prior to passing that final inspection. Just missing placards and labels, missing address labels. Installed system does not match design or drawing. Again, because you can upload throughout the permit lifecycle, you should be able to have the most up-to-date as-built system design on the permit itself. Additional errors could be wire sizing, loose wire connections, and the inspectors will check for these things as well. Meter service clearance is not met. This, of course, is awkward because if we find that the meter service or the clearances aren't met, you will have to rebuild, parts of that or at least move some things around. So please do check those prior to adding anything to the wall. Meter guidelines not met, and then variances not requested. If those are not done ahead of time, it does just cause delays in the project. So please make sure that that's all done prior to that inspection. Alrighty. That was a pretty large section, and I know I saw a couple of questions in the chat, although I'm not sure if we have any that are unaddressed still. So I'm gonna look to my team and see if there's anything that you guys have or that you've seen that has not been answered yet. I did see one question from Joel Bennett. I'm not sure if we answered. And Stu, I'm gonna look to you for this one. The question is, if changing means of disconnect and have to use another knockout to enter the utility meter, do we delete the unused raceway and KO seal, or can we fill the raceway with fire blocker? Or in this case, do we have to change out the utility meter? And Stu, I'm gonna look to you for that one.
It depends on the age of the utility meter. I mean, if it's a brand new utility meter and you're just putting in a transfer switch, I think that you can use a weather-tight KO seal and just remove the raceway. We don't want to have any unused, obsolete raceways coming out of meter cans. You want to have just the one that you're using, and everything else needs to be properly sealed. Again, if the meter can itself is old, then yeah, it'll need to be upgraded. But other than that, if it's a new can, then you can just seal that hole properly.
Thank you. And I did see a couple other questions. I'm just going to go through some of these and I'll try to address them. And if you guys have already answered them, please stop me. But scheduling the 305 final is the final inspection with City and with Austin Energy. Yes, and sorry to add confusion here, but the 305 final is the final inspection for all permit types. The auxiliary power electrical permit, we built in the final solar inspection so that we could add additional functionality and deficiencies for that particular process. But if you request the 305, it's the same thing as requesting the final solar inspection. Just currently the system is not set up to send out those notices. So we're asking you guys to request final solar inspections on the AB&C portal when possible. If you don't see a final solar inspection, and again, just to add some more confusion to this, if you applied for a permit prior to our launch date, so prior to 11/1/2024, you probably will not have the final solar inspection functionality. So for that, just request the 305 final, and we will get that scheduled for you as that final solar inspection. But apologies for the extra steps there. And then I also see a question from Devin. Should we no longer request via Smartsheet, or should we continue to do so until everything is rolled out 100%? I'm going to say feel free to take a blended approach to that. Again, we do have some of those notices that we realize are not quite going out. However, we are going to start moving to AB&C, and we do get all of those requests. So I think in the meantime, what we'll try to do is just make sure that we're confirming things via email if we don't see the emails go out from AB&C. However, if you don't feel comfortable with that yet and you'd rather continue to use Smartsheet in the meantime, that's fine. It is still available to you for now. So please, feel free to do what makes sense there. But we do ask that you guys start to get comfortable with that new process because that's what we'll start to use going forward. All right, next question from Martha Farwell-Pipkin is, I designed and permitted a commercial system with an approved PV meter enclosure. That enclosure is no longer on the list of approved meter enclosures. Will it fail inspection? And like Stuart, I'm going to look to you on that one, although I have a feeling I know the answer to it. Can you answer that one?
Yeah. So if the permit end date aligns up with a meter that was on the approved list at that time, then no, we're not going to retroactively go back and make you swap out a meter can. So if the project has lasted 8 months and the meter can list has changed in that time, we will honor the meter can that you had spec'd out when you applied for the permit. Hopefully that makes sense.
Thanks, Stu. And I'm trying to go through these and just see if there's anything else that's unanswered, but I feel like you guys already tackled a bunch of these. I
think I got most of them. Yeah.
Yeah, thank you. I'm gonna move it back over to Ruby. Thank you, guys.
Thanks, Megan. Thanks, Stu. If there are any unanswered questions, just feel free to drop them back into the chat and we can answer them. And then I'm going to resend our attendance poll just in case you missed it. Please fill that out so we can mark you as attended. Right. And then lastly, some contacts and helpful links. This presentation will be sent out to you guys, so you'll can reference these later on or send them to other colleagues. Helpful links, we have our solar education course. If you want to verify that your participating contractor information on our website is correct, feel free to do that. All right, and then some more helpful links. And yeah, those will be sent out to you later today. So you'll be able to access those and yeah, you'll be able to access those links. Feel free to ask any questions in the chat. And yeah, we thank you for coming today. And thanks to Megan, Stu, and Athena for answering everyone's questions.